IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashton Doctor, your habit coach. And if you haven't heard the first episode with Siddharth Bhargav, check it out because we talk about food, nutrition, and understanding. All these subtler aspects just beyond understanding calories. We talk a little bit about anti-aging, understanding what inflammation is in the body. Today, we're going to talk about something completely different with Siddharth. We're going to be talking about his entrepreneurial journey. Because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is something that I'm extremely passionate about, and I love hearing stories. And these stories inspire us to maybe dream and maybe start something of our own. Siddharth is the founder of Food Darzi, which is an extremely popular food service app, especially in Bombay. Siddharth, where all are you?
Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, and now Jaipur, Chandigarh. 8 cities.
Almost everywhere.
Almost everywhere.
Superb. Siddharth, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Siddharth, entrepreneurship. When I say the word, what is the thought that comes to your mind?
Building something from scratch. That's the first thought that comes to my mind. And that's what I think it's the same thought for everybody, right? What is entrepreneurship? How do we define entrepreneurship?
We used to, the reason why I always ask this is cute because we normally think of entrepreneurs as, Jeff Bezos, not Jeff Bezos. Did I mix up two people?
No.
Elon Musk, right. Jeff Bezos, those kind of people are entrepreneurs, right? But I used to always tell, the guy who makes sandwiches on the road, Raju Sandwich, he's also an entrepreneur, right? And in my mind, I always wanted that to come across as entrepreneurship, and there are so many different ways that we can define it. So for you, it is building something from scratch.
Yes, it's building something from scratch. And you have to enjoy what you're building from scratch and keep doing that for the rest of your life. And then you'll be called a serial entrepreneur. So
if you do multiple things for the rest of your life, you'll be called a serial entrepreneur. If you do one thing for the rest of your life, a serial entrepreneur.
Yes, my bad.
And if you start a cereal company, then you can do all sorts of puns on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how did your entrepreneurship journey start?
This started in 2017, of course, with Food Darzi. I did lose a little interest in just being a doctor. Of course, I had my own health complications at that point in time. I stopped talking about them now, but they sort of pushed me towards Food Darzi. At that time, of course, we didn't know that we were going to become entrepreneurs and we didn't know the kind of journey we're going to have. But as time kept passing, Food Darzi became my first startup. Actually, my second startup. In medical school, I used to sell bones to make a little extra cash on the side.
What?
That was my first startup. Yeah, that's true.
How did that idea come up?
So it's quite simple. Once you enter your first year, when you have to study anatomy, every student is supposed to have a bone set. So either a full bone set or a half bone set, which is your skull, your vertebrae, all of the bones, because you need to study the ridges and the grooves in those bones and how they're placed together, things like that. Now, everybody had a hard time getting these bones because there were these things known as a real bone set, which was real bones, and there was something known as an artificial bone set, which sold for much more, but it didn't have all the grooves and ridges because it was basically made out of plastic or plaster of Paris, and it didn't have all the small bits that you really want to study. So at that time, everybody was having trouble, and when I reached my second year, I thought, now my juniors are going to have trouble. So I sold my own bone set to one of my juniors, and I thought, wow, I just made $500 on top of what I bought it for last year. And then I realized, damn, there are too many first years who enter colleges every year. And then I went to the interiors of Maharashtra. I think I went to Nagpur, I went to Dhule, I went to Satara, and I went to Latur, these 4 places. And I picked up around 100 bone sets from the now second year students in the interiors of Maharashtra. My cupboard used to have bones, and once my mom opened it and she was completely scared out of her mind. She was like, what is this? So I picked up 100 bone sets for around $1,500-$1,600 because that's how cheap it was there. Then I came to Bombay and I sold it at a lot more, which was 4,500 rupees. And I made a nice little saving there. And I thought I made it in life because teachers from different colleges who wanted to study further would call me up and tell me, "Are you the same guy who's selling bones illegally?" I said, "Yes, I'm the same guy who's selling bones illegally." So that's when I realized that, it's maybe time to put this business to bed. And I had saved up enough money to go on for all my college trips and all my kharcha pani for then. And yeah, that was my first startup. Of course, my juniors continued this. And unfortunately, they took it a little too far because it was two of them who were doing the same business together. And they thought we need to make a lot of profit. So they started selling the same bone set that I used to sell for 4.5, 5,000. They started selling it for 10,000 rupees because they had to buy it from people who got it at 4.5. And there were two people. And they just ruined the whole market because now poor students who ideally should have been paying 2.5, 3,000 rupees for bones were now paying 10,000 rupees for bones. And I felt a little guilty. But chalo, theek hai. I mean, what is done is done. So this was my first startup. Of course, Food Darzi was my first official startup.
Siddhant, Netflix is going to get in touch with you, okay? They have cocaine wars. Now they're going to start like bone wars and like follow this out. Like, who's the bone mafia in the country? Okay, so bones and then Food Darzi.
And then Food Darzi. So Food Darzi started. I have 3 partners with me. All 4 of us are from the same school. Of course, we didn't know each other very well back then, but once the idea came through, we started talking, we started building, and now Food Darzi is quite large. Yeah, 8 cities. We're planning on coming up with 2 more, which is Surat and Ahmedabad by the end of this year. And then next year, we probably raise funds because we're still bootstrapped. We never needed the funds and we're still growing well. So yeah, the plan eventually the next 5 years is to get Food Darzi available to the masses, get the price of our meals down to 100 rupees a meal and make everybody healthy. And then you're really a force to be reckoned with. Right now, you're a niche service that is making its money, doing well, passing on good information, have happy clients, everything well, but we're not a mass service. And that's the goal for Food Darzi over the next 3 to 5 years that become an absolutely mass service.
Very, very interesting. So 4 partners started off right from the beginning.
Yes.
Right? How did you guys decide on partnering together? What were those conversations like?
It was quite organic. So, of course, again, it's very cliched, but I was at this party in 2016. 2016, July the 7th. It's my best friend's birthday. We were in Lonavala for a party, and one of his friends, who's now my partner, his name is Devaj. The 2 of us were basically, had a couple of drinks. I think we were underage back then, but I'm still going to reveal. We had a couple of drinks, and we were discussing. Both of us were into gymming at that point in time. I was 20 years old and he was also 20 years old or 21 maybe. And we were both like, we come from vegetarian households and our moms don't let us eat non-veg at home, and how are we going to build muscle? So we should have a service that will get non-veg food to all these boys who want to build muscle. And that conversation continued. 3 months later, he gives me a call and he's like, one of my cousins has just left PwC, the consulting firm, and he wants to get into the food industry and the health food industry. So let's all have a meeting. And December of 2016, the 4 of us met. We discussed that we want to do something in this space. We met and we came up with the name Food Darzi, which initially people thought it's not going to do well, but now Food Darzi is a unique name to have, which is a tailor-made nutritionist Food Darzi. We started off with the ketogenic diet, did that for a year and a half. Then we ventured into different cities, different diets. And now we're a much larger organization which has around 400 employees. We deal with around 2,500 people who are on subscription for an every single day basis. So it's grown, but it only has to grow further. So yeah, post recording this podcast, I'm going to be heading to office and rack my brains the entire day.
So, Siddhant, when you started, right, you said it right now saying that we completely bootstrapped. That means we haven't taken extra funding. Yes. We never needed to take extra funding. One, what is the philosophy behind that? Because, there are so many people who start up only to take funding, right? The reason for starting up is take funding, right? What was the thought behind that?
It was quite simple. When you take money from somebody, you have to part with a percentage of your equity. Basically, you have to give them a share in your company. And in our heads, the vision that we have for Food Darzi is that it's going to become 1,000 crore company at some point in time. And you don't want to be parting with equity when you know what you are capable of doing, when you know what the scope of your business can be, is why we didn't take money. Now, part 2, we didn't need the money. So fortunately, we come from families where we didn't have to earn money stat. We didn't have to repay anybody. Our parents weren't dependent on us for running the house, which is a great space to be in because there was no pressure on us to start the startup. We didn't take salaries for the first 3.5 years. So that was another reason. And the third thing is we were always cash flow positive. So now we're a bootstrap company, um, where we work on a reverse capital model. I don't know if it's a little complicated, but essentially people pay us in advance for the service that we're going to deliver to them, post them paying us. So we didn't need the money per se to provide them with the service that we're providing them. And as we kept becoming more and more profitable, more and more money kept getting saved, and we didn't really need the money. Like all of our people burn cash in marketing. We have the cash to spend for marketing. We spend around 35 lakh rupees a month on the performance marketing, the digital marketing, which has taken the entire world by a storm. So we have the money to be doing that because our clients pay us in advance. So now we want to raise money from a strategic partner who's going to help us scale this from 10 cities to 100 cities. That's why we want his money. Otherwise, we don't really need the money currently. Also, we're still working on our tech, we're still working on our processes. Probably another year and a half where we will be in a position where we're okay burning money. Because right now we feel that, paise, if you burn money and your tech isn't strong enough to handle 10x of an influx of customers, then you're not doing yourself justice, neither are you doing them justice. So that's the thinking. And sorry, that's why we want to stay bootstrapped for probably a year and a half more. And then you raise money at a much higher valuation, right? Because our revenue is increasing every single day. The more cities we're getting, the more leverage we have, the more products we're getting, the more leverage we have. And I think once we raise money, it's going to be at a superb valuation that we'll actually be proud of.
Before going ahead, we'll take a quick break.
Ow! I injured my arm. I was in the gym lifting weights, doing, my normal pull-ups and traps with about 400 pounds in each arm. And actually, I was doing the bench press. I can't lie. I was on my 8th lift. It was about 360 pounds without a spot. I don't like to go lower and, embarrass myself. And suddenly my daughter enters all excited. And she says, "Dad, have you heard?" And I said, "Heard what?" And she said, "Now you can get Kotak home loans at only 6.5% interest." I was so shocked, my hand slipped, the bench press bar fell on my other hand, and before I knew it, I'm on my way to hospital in a lot of pain. But before the hospital, driver, Kotak Mahindra Bank pe rokna. I need to do this now. I blame my daughter for this. ऐसी बातें बताने से पहले कृपया ध्यान रखे. I mean, come on, yaar. Terms and conditions apply. Interest rate starting at 6.5% per annum.
And we are back. What were the biggest difficulties in this journey so far?
The biggest, I wouldn't call them difficulties because
interesting challenges.
Interesting challenges were initially we used to have an outsourced kitchen wherein there was a chef at whose kitchen we would prepare our meals. Multiple times, multiple fights. We've had to shut Fooddarzi down for a couple of days, give excuses that the kitchen caught fire, things like that. Those were some of the challenges. Setting up your own kitchen from scratch when neither of us had, or when none of us had a food background was a challenge. Convincing people to be spending 30,000 rupees on food per month was a challenge. So, of course, you still face challenges, like your retention rate is always a challenge. HR, people management is a challenge because we never thought that this company is going to have 400 employees. Dealing with 400 employees, dealing with the attrition that happens, everything is a challenge. So it's a very operation intensive business. And that does put a lot of stress. Like I handle operations and my dark circles probably speak for themselves because it does get difficult. And some days are really bad because, you're growing and you've reached 8 cities and suddenly one city is going to fall flat because suddenly both the operation managers in that city decide that either you pay me more money or I'm resigning. And now you're back there at square one for that city because you're like, I can't believe that, we've been making so much money, we've been doing so well, and now I'm going to have to go to that city and personally sit there for a week hiring because both of these people are leaving. And I'm like, what have we done? But then that's part of the problem. Like the other day, I'm going to tell you what a setback. We have 4 printers in our kitchens, okay? Because the next day, the food that's going to go out the next day, we have bags, there are labels that are printed, the label is stuck onto the bag. Now, because of the stupidity of the operation managers, all 4 printers at 2:30 a.m. at night stopped working together. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There is a process set where you're supposed to check each printer each week. And you're telling me 4 printers aren't working at 2:30 a.m. and I'm sitting in Dubai. And I've had to wake up my sister who had to take my home printer to the kitchen to print. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's been almost 5 years. 2,000 people in Bombay are going to get food tomorrow. And are you telling me that because printers are not working, people are not going to get their food? So, this seems so stupid, right? Like, this is not a challenge you want to be facing so late in your startup, but we had to. So, yeah, these are some of the challenges we face on an everyday basis, man.
These are the fun ones. I keep talking about it. Like, when we think about entrepreneurship, nobody tells you about these things, right?
Nobody tells you about these things. Yeah.
Nobody tells you about the times when you had to suddenly go and clean the toilets. People are going to come, they're going to start using the office, and the maids and people who are supposed to actually come and clean have not done their job. Yep. You do what you have to do, right? And this attitude of you do what you have to do is, I think, an important aspect of entrepreneurship. And
absolutely.
Right, waking sister up, making her go, right? Family becomes the best assistant. Yeah, absolutely.
And the onus was on me, right? Like, I didn't want to disturb. So because now once you've been running it for a while, we all have our roles, we've all got our departments that we handle. And it's sort of like a thing where, you don't want to be unnecessarily involving your partners at 2:30 a.m. because they're also sleeping, right? They've got their roles and responsibilities at 7:30 in the morning also. So you try and find ways to do things in your departments on your own. Of course, if nothing works out, then you call up your partners and you tell them, go to the bloody kitchen and print it out right now. But yeah, you need to jugaad and get work done all the time in a startup. But that reflects negatively on our processes also. Like the point of revealing this was that one of the challenges is setting your processes airtight, because as you keep scaling, if your processes aren't strong, they're going to, we call them processes fat rahe. It's called yahan fat rahi or wahan fat rahi hai. It's bound to happen.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a transition moment that takes place when you suddenly stop thinking about your business as something small that you guys have started and as something that is a little bit more professional in a way of approaching, right? Can you tell me when was that for you? Like, what led up to that?
That happened when we finally got our first large kitchen. So we were operating out of a small little kitchen in Mahim, and there were absolutely no processes over there because too many things were happening in a very small little space. Like, the kitchen was probably a little larger than my room, and that's about 500 square feet, which is really, really small. Then once we finally moved to the large kitchen in Parel, that's when we realized that, if we want to do this at a grand scale, everything needs to be documented and everything needs to follow a process, right from the procurement of the raw material to the prepping, to the cooking, to the blast chilling, to the packing, to the dispatch, to the delivery. Everything must follow processes, and then starts all of the WhatsApp groups. We probably have like 500 WhatsApp groups across all the cities, and you're monitoring. So that was the change. Once we moved into the first large kitchen, that's when we realized that if you want to manage this well, you need to have all your processes set.
Processes is the part of the business, right? But also amongst the partners, role division, right? Understanding how you guys work together, etc. That is also a system that needs to start forming. How did that happen?
Oh, it happened very organically because all of us realized that some of us or all of us were good at something and not so good at something. For example, I don't like using my brain just like that. Like, I'm not a person who's going to sit on this chair and start thinking of ideas. I'm not that person. Like, I use my brain when I have to. And that makes me slightly lazy as an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur should always be thinking ahead. But two of my partners are really good at that. So when it comes to active business development, they're the ones who are thinking about that. But I'm good at my people skills. I'm good at the social media aspect of things. I'm good at my creativity. I'm good at managing people. So I very organically moved to the entire operation bit. I obviously had to handle nutrition. The social media team comes under me. And whatever PR that we're doing comes under me. Obviously, the recording, I am the face of the brand. So a lot of my time goes in there as well. So that was a division for me that happened very organically. I'm also very meticulous when it comes to laptop work. So for the first 2 or 3 years, a lot of the processes that needed laptop checking, quick laptop checking, things like that, the execution as well, that used to come under me. Then for one of the partners, performance marketing became his role, which is super important because that's where all of your money comes in through, all of your customers come in through. For one person, he's very analytical. So the tech thinking of processes, thinking of how the order management system is supposed to flow, that moves towards him. And one of us is really like a Hitler, where everything needs to function. And that person very organically became like the CEO kind of a figure in the company. So, everything was really organic. It wasn't ever that you're going to do this and you're going to, of course, for certain things, yes. But for the majority of it, we just fell into our places.
Interesting. And then it was formalized at some point of time? Like you are the
It still
CEO,
isn't
you are the
formalized.
this,
No,
you're the
no, no,
this.
no, no. We're still all co-founders because some of us feel that, if we give CXO tags to each other, the others might not feel good. I don't think so. Like I'm okay reporting to, like, there's four of us, right? So I always used to think of this as a when I was younger, that there's a CFO, there's a CEO, and there's a COO. So in तीनों में से, what am I going to be? And but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at this point. Once we raise funding, once we actually convert to क्या बोलते हैं उसको, right now we're an LLP, which is it's a partnership agreement. Once you turn into a company, that's when you need a private limited company. That's when we probably might want to do this, but not as of now.
But there's so many advantages of getting to the private company stage, because then you get your board meetings.
Yes.
And board meetings are super important if you use them correctly.
Yes.
If you have a good quality board where you have idea generation, where you actually use mind and all of that, then it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So I was reading this fantastic book called The E-Myth Revisited. Okay. I think it's a very, very important book that all entrepreneurs should read. It's one of those things. E-Myth meaning entrepreneurship myth. And out there, the person says something very interesting. He says that no matter whether you're a 1-person company, 2-person company, there are some 5-6 roles that you have to divide and wear different hats at each time. So CEO, CMO, COO, CFO, all these are things that you have to wear and almost keep them as separate visiting cards. Today, I'm doing the role of a CMO.
Oh, very well said. Very well said.
Right? Today, I'm doing the role of a CFO. Today, I'm doing the role of this. So all the businesses that I've set up started off with that idea.
Correct.
Saying, right now, I'm in this meeting as the CMO. Next time I'm in a meeting as a CFO. And that segregation of labor especially helps with the thinking.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting way of working out. Do you all have consultants? Do you all have people that help you out?
Initially, working yes. Of course, with every stage, we always do hire consultants to help us, like, get your licenses sorted and things like that. But now we don't work with consultants because it's been long enough. Like, of course, if we have to start something new again, we will need consultants to help. But initially, the consultants came to design the kitchen, get the licenses, things like that, but not anymore.
Not a business consultant, not a mentor or something like that?
For certain processes, yes. Like, for example, for the performance marketing, we recently partnered up with a consultant to help us with the smaller fragments of performance marketing. So I think it goes process by process. Every time we plan on doing something that we think, like, for example, now the SEO bit, we're trying to focus on the SEO bit very actively. So now we will need an SEO consultant to come in and help us out with that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Couple of points. What are the habits that you've picked up as an entrepreneur? Like, what are the things that have...
I think I've picked up more bad habits than I've picked up good habits. But
tell me. Like, what are habits that every entrepreneur should have, or at least start thinking like one?
Every entrepreneur, habits that they should have, one is structure. I think structure in life is a very underrated habit because, entrepreneurs are regarded as people, or as looked upon as people that, they work all the time and they don't have time for anything. But I think it has to be an organized chaos even over there, because if you literally don't have time to do anything, you're not going to be able to get work done effectively. So I think having structure is very important. Like, even for me, for example, I know I have to wake up at this time because there are certain tasks planned for that time. Like, everything is structured. Of course, once you go to office and you have 15 tasks to complete, you do them however you want to, but you need to have these periods in the day when like, I know my brain works better in the evening for doing this kind of a task, and I'm going to pile up all of those tasks for me in the evening. That's my structure for me. I know for a fact that in the morning, my brain just doesn't work. So all of my mindless calls are kept for the morning. So, that's one thing, is structure. Second thing is discipline, for sure. You cannot, and I'm not disciplined. This is where I lack. You cannot be an indisciplined entrepreneur because it's going to affect every part of the way you run your business as well. Your employees pick up so much of your indiscipline or your bad habits. Your employees are very quick to catch, and then they will start taking you for granted on certain things where they feel you're not up to the mark also. So that is, it's very, very important to be disciplined as an entrepreneur. And third, I can't think. What do you think? What do you think? I mean, you're also an entrepreneur, right? So what do you think? What are habits that an entrepreneur must have?
One is curiosity and learning. I think those two are extremely important as an entrepreneur, because when you realize that you're important to nobody but yourself, right? Then how are you going to continue leveling up? Because you have to level up in order for your organization to level up.
Yeah.
So that constant curiosity and learning is one of the most important things that, as a habit for an entrepreneur, it's important. And some of the best entrepreneurs I know are people who get into that. And the second one, I think, is embrace the grind. There are things that you don't like doing. And if you can start enjoying the things that you don't like doing, then you're unstoppable.
Yeah. Very well said.
Those two, I think, make a big, big difference when it comes to the entrepreneurship life. Okay, last question on this. What do you feel everybody should become an entrepreneur? A. And B, what is the first step that they should take?
Question number A, I don't think everybody should become an entrepreneur. But this is my opinion. I think a person will end up understand. Okay, let's put it this way. I don't think a person should become an entrepreneur at a young age. It's not necessary that you have to be an entrepreneur when you're in your 20s or when you're 24 or 25. It's not necessary to start your first business when you're young. Secondly, I think there are two kinds of people. One who are much better when they're led, and that's one. Two, there are kinds of people who are much better at purely execution, not managing. So, some people just aren't cut out to, I don't know, is there a nice way of putting this? I don't think people are smarter or less smarter. I'm just saying the way you're wired, the way you're brought up, the way you've attended your school, the way you've lived your life. Sometimes you're not good at managing people. Sometimes you're not good at having foresight. Sometimes you're not good at creating processes. You're just good at executing things. You're very diligent, you're very meticulous, and you're a good worker, which means at times you might not want to become an entrepreneur. But this mindset can always change. At the age of 45, for example, if you realize that, it's time to change my mindset, I think I have a good business idea, then you can. So I think it's a very phasic thing. So it wouldn't be apt to comment whether everybody should become an entrepreneur. At some point in time, I think people can become entrepreneurs, but it's not cut out for everybody. I think people have different personalities.
Interesting.
Sometimes I don't think I'm cut out to be an entrepreneur, because I also sometimes work better on the execution bit, but some days I'm actually really phenomenal at the other thing. So I think self-doubt is a very big part of being an entrepreneur. It's
imposter syndrome, self-doubt, most important things. If you don't think that you're a failure, from time to time, very, very important. That self-doubt must come in.
And what was the second part of the question?
Starting point. Many people have ideas. They want to do things. What's a good starting point?
A good starting point is the execution of the idea. Like, you so rightly mentioned, many people have ideas, and too many people have ideas, but nobody really gets up and starts it. So a starting point is the shift in mindset that this idea needs to get converted to. The execution needs to start, and taking that day one is the that's the thing. Like execution is the first step. If you can't execute, your idea is worthless.
Lovely.
I don't think I gave a very good answer for this, but
I completely agree with you. From idea to putting it out there and trying it out should be 30 seconds. It should be like that. It shouldn't be something that you keep thinking over. Put it out there, see if it flies. See if it runs. At least talk to 3 people about it.
Makes sense.
So many people hide their ideas saying that koi chori karega. I think that's the stupidest thing. Put it out there, see if it works, see what's going to happen.
Fair.
Lovely. Siddhant, I absolutely love this conversation. Thank you so much for coming and having this discussion with us. I love talking about entrepreneurship, as you can clearly see. So it was.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great, and I'm actually quite refreshed and charged to go to office now. It's 12:30 p.m. and this is a good time to be stimulated mentally, and I think I'm going to do good work today in office.
Woohoo, superb. Siddhant, how can people get in touch with you? How can people follow up what you guys are doing?
Or they can just get on to Instagram, and you can just look up my name, Dr. Siddhant Bhargav, or you can follow Food Darzi on Instagram, which is food.darzi, or you can always just visit our website, which is fooddarzi.com, and we'll take care of the rest for you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And
Thank you
definitely
for
come
having
on
me.
again. We're going to have a fantastic conversation
For sure.
in the future.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashtin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome 180.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus is joined by writer-director Faraz Arif Ansari to talk about their critically acclaimed short films, Sisak, Siberia, and the recent hit Sheer Korma. On The Habit Coach, Ashton introduces us to Avinash BR, co-founder of Deep Rooted Company, and his take on the quality of the food and supply chain in India and current trends in the farming sector. On Naan Curry, Sadaf and Archit talk about the humble potato, right from its origin and trade history to the various ways it can be used in dishes and its health benefits. On All Things Policy, Aditya Ramanathan joins Aditya Parekh to discuss the UK's first ever national space strategy document and the lessons it may hold for India. And on Say No to Drama, Chetna slices through the drama of bad boss behavior and shares what it takes to be a good boss. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our others for that matter, please do tell a friend. We really appreciate you spreading this. Word of mouth helps a lot. And finally, this week, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, and Intel. We really appreciate the support.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Archit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Naan Curry podcast every Wednesday, सिर्फ IVM podcast ऐप या वेबसाइट पर, या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.